Wally Baram has an impressive resume. She's jumped from stand-up to writing to acting without losing her voice along the way.
Just a little fun fact. First time I ever masturbated was under an umbrella so that God couldn't see. I think I just pictured him in the sky with the X-ray vision goggles they used to find Osama bin Laden. Just looking for me, fiddling the bean.
Welcome to Q, Wally.
Thanks for having me.
You've had such a big year with Overcompensating.
What's a freshman 15?
Mocha frat, whipped cream, salted caramel, rainbow sprinkles, chocolate drizzle, and a cookie straw.
Wow, that sounds really body positive.
I want to go back, though, to the beginning. I read you've been doing stand-up since you were a teenager. Is that right?
Yeah.
Were you just a naturally funny kid?
I don't know. I think it was actually more naturally socially dysfunctional. And so I was like looking for outlets in which I could be heard and seen. I was looking for attention, is the truth. I was looking for attention. And I had always seen, the kind of the stand-up comedians, but also like multi-hyphenates of a certain time, the Mindy Kalings and, Ali Wong and all these people that were trying to do it all and aspired to that. And I was like, let's see what that's about.
Let's see how that works.
Yeah.
You're at home. Who are you writing for? What are you thinking about in terms of your early material when you thought, you know what, I should write some of this down and test it out on some folks?
I got my start. I thought I wanted to be a cowgirl. So bizarrely
a cowgirl
enough,
in New Jersey. Not a lot of them.
No, not a lot of them. And I had done no cowgirl-esque things, but I
You
somehow
like the
got it
outfits?
in my head. I was like, I think I was like drawn to this vision of old Westerns where it's like old Westerns give you this sense that despite the fact that the world is lawless, cowboys live by their own code and they have their own integrity and they seem powerful. And I'm sure there was clearly a lot going on with me at that time. And I was like, I want to be a cowgirl. And I was like 13 and I found this school on the internet where you work on like a working ranch and also go to high school and you learn how to be a cowgirl. And I did that, which is a very lofty way of discovering you don't want to be a cowgirl and that you shouldn't let a 13-year-old make major life decisions. It was crazy. It was like, I look back, I'm like, why you guys just let me do that? That was crazy.
Yeah, like what do you say to your parents were just like, yeah, let's do it. Go to the ranch.
They had, we won't get into it on this lovely cue, but they were preoccupied with some of their own things. So I think they were like, yeah, our precocious kid, she's gonna go out there and be a cowgirl. I don't know. Both of them, I come from a long line of small people that don't do outdoorsy things. So I don't know what anyone was thinking with that decision, but they let me do that. And then I started doing like open mics in like around that area, and that area, the school was in Central California. And then I really started in Los Angeles.
And you realized that, yeah, you got jokes. Like, did you, I mean, I'm wondering if there was a moment that you told a joke where you were just like, yeah, I got jokes. People like this. Yeah.
I was like a class clown type person. So I think it was that. And then I think it was, I remember trying my first open mic and being like so nervous and, like writing my name down on the list and then deleting my name or erasing it and then rewriting it and then erasing it and rewriting it. And like by the end of the open mic, everyone was just like, get up there, do it. Fine. And then I did it and everyone was, it was a good time, obviously, because I'm still here. I think having those good foundational memories help you ultimately, want to continue pursuing it versus becoming traumatized.
Of course. You often joke about your mom, who I've seen pictures of, and she is quite lovely.
Oh, thank you.
I know I have a hot mom. Because every time we go places, people love to play this game where they go, oh my gosh, are you two sisters? That's a game that's only fun for one of us.
I would say that she's feisty, she's flamboyant, she's a sexy woman. That's probably true. She's her own woman, and she's industrious, I would say. She's unfortunately everything you would think of when you think of a stereotypical Latino woman. I don't know if that's unfortunate or not. She's just like, she has a lot of emotion. She can go, angry to sweet to she's hysterical. She's a lot of things all at once. She dances salsa constantly. She's, always, she loves a new boyfriend. So it's just like, I wish, but yeah, that's my mom.
Does she love the fact that you bring her into your act so much? Like, how does she react to that? Is she into
loves
it?
which
Oh,
is
yeah.
sometimes, which is crazy because not everything I say about, I'm very honest about elements of my upbringing. But she just loves to be included. My parents are utterly bizarre. And after a show, when people come up and say thank you to me, and say, they say good job to me, they'll say thank you. Like, so there's clearly something going on.
Your parents will say thank you on
When
behalf
I
of
get a
you when you get a
Yes.
compliment. Like,
so I'm
you,
like,
okay.
they think they're receiving it for sure. I mean, it's just, there's a lot that could be diagnosed right there,
They sound, their personalities are huge.
Yes.
And I've heard you I've seen you write about your personality being less huge, even though you're on stage and you're doing this very public work. What was it like for you then to grow up around these massive personalities and still come out of it somehow finding your voice?
I'm sure there's no coincidence in the fact that I grew up with a lot of big voices in the home, and then didn't quite know how to find my voice. I feel like I ended up meeting a lot of child of larger than life parent out in my travels that I think relate to this, where you don't know, how do I coexist around such, a big voice. And I would say I'm sure that is why I in part tried to find this avenue. One thing that's great about stand-up is that, and also maybe this sounds insane and narcissistic to say, but or not there's something maniacal in this, but it's really a conversation with the audience where you're given permission to speak and you're given the space to speak. Theoretically, no one should be interrupting you. It is like maniacal to call it a conversation because it's such a one-sided conversation, but the audience is giving you feedback, positive, negative, and there's not a ton of variable feedback,
Right.
so you get to really dictate the direction of the social engagement.
You do dig deeply into your kind of personal life in your comedy, and I wonder if it ever feels like, you know what, I need to pull back on that, or maybe that part of my life should be out of bounds, or how do you strike that balance between what you can share and what you want to keep to yourself?
I never have an issue sharing too much. I just have an issue when I'm sharing something that's vulnerable and I feel like I'm not communicating myself properly. So I only feel overexposed or uncomfortable when I'm misunderstood, or I can tell that the way that I've portrayed something is not exactly the truth. I think that's actually when I'm most self-conscious or doesn't feel right. Ultimately, I'm not sharing things that I'm still processing. I think I used to do that more in stand-up, and that, around this time is my 10-year anniversary in stand-up, and I was looking back today, oddly, to my first show. And in my first show, I talk about how I was so disappointed with how sex was going to be. Can I talk about that? Yeah.
Yeah, of course you can. Yes.
I was 19 or 18 in the show and that I was doing. So my first stand-up show, like truly big show. And I was talking about how I was so disappointed that I was like, how we really sensationalize teen sex. Like, it's a porn category, but this is I'm miserable. Everyone is quiet. It's short. It's like, and I was so angry on stage, and I was like, wow, I was really going through it at the time. And I think sometimes that serves you and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know that I do it as much anymore. I also think that the things I go through now aren't necessarily things that I find funny. I'm still trying to figure out how to talk about like the political climate or things, I'm So, and there's some things I would love to talk about, but I just don't know how to make them funny in regards to how I feel about them at a certain time. So I get that answer is kind of
No, I get
all
it.
over the map, but
No, I get it. I once lived with two comedians, stand-up comedians. They had a sketch troupe, and then they would do stand-up sometimes. It was interesting. They were interesting as roommates, that's for sure. But the craft of it was what struck me. They were just constantly writing and rewriting and writing and writing and writing and rewriting, like in a way that was just like, you do not talk to them when they're writing. And so what it sounds like to me is that craft part of it is something that's just that you, as you 10 years on, you can look back and say you're still deep into the craft of the writing.
For sure.
Like it's just a part of it. Are you
Yeah.
good at just locking in for those writing sessions, for the writing part?
I think, now that I also write for TV is what
Yeah.
is tricky. If I'm going through something that I only want to express in a script, then I'm locked in on a script. If I'm going through something that's like a story and I've figured out how to tell it on stage, then I only want to work on it on stage. So I think ultimately, yes, but sometimes it's not stand-up. Sometimes it's also TV. Sometimes it depends on how I want to express whatever I'm working through at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have worked on, like, this brings me to the writing part, because you have worked on now some of the biggest television shows. A personal favorite of mine, What We Do in the Shadows. I could just keep watching that over and over again. That's about these vampire roommates in Los Angeles. And then there's Shrinking, another great one about a therapist working through his own issues. When you enter into a writer's room in that situation, how do you approach writing the script, but also bringing your own voice, your own sensibility into the room? Because these are usually it's like they're established, they have a voice, they have a personality.
Yeah.
How do you get in there?
I think that you're constantly trying. One thing I feel like people don't quite realize about TV is really everything in the room is dictated by the showrunner for the most part. So
Right.
you're constantly trying to, there's what you might want and what the showrunner wants. And then what can I compromise on to get what I would want into the showrunner's voice? But everything is being pitched to your boss's POV. So you're
Right.
constantly like, it's a bit of a negotiation, and also you just have to trust. Okay, I know that my boss will probably like this pitch over this pitch. I don't understand why, but I do trust that they got where they are because they're really good at their job, and so I'm gonna try to pitch to their voice. And I think though that's why the benefit of having like a diverse like dearth of is that whatever
Yeah,
group,
dearth is right. Yeah,
a dearth
group, sure.
a dearth yeah of writers in the room is that everyone's translating their voice into the showrunner's voice, and you're kind of getting something different every time.
Yeah. Do you think about just the showrunner's voice, or because I'm thinking about something like Shrinking, when you're writing for Harrison Ford's voice?
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, what?
How's the freezing?
What's the freezing?
Sometimes when I'm standing still and I want to take a step, I can't.
That sounds awful.
Not as bad as being vegan.
What's the approach?
I think that you have to, find the Harrison Ford inside yourself.
Okay.
It's like I'm always saying, find the Harrison Ford inside yourself and then find that guy and speak from him.
What does he sound like? You sound like you were just dropping into him just now. Just a little bit.
He sounds, he's like he's gruff, he's to the point. He's almost, I think about that character almost like I think about Harrison Ford himself, who truly is like a carpenter,
Right.
You interact with Harrison Ford on set and he feels like a carpenter for sure. You're like, and also just an older gentleman. I don't know.
Was he a carpenter?
He was a carpenter. He was a carpenter before he was.
Oh, that makes
if my mom
so
were
much
here,
sense.
she'd be like, who was also a carpenter. Jesus. Jesus. And
Jesus.
I'd be like, thanks, Mom. Thanks. Yeah.
When are you going to start writing for Jesus?
Yeah,
like-
truly. She's just crazy about that guy. If she sees a guy that looks like Jesus in the street, she will take a photo, a selfie, and send it to me. She'll be like, look, it's me in Japanese Jesus. I'm like, Mom, you can't do this to people just because they have long hair. This is not good social skills.
She doesn't care, though. It doesn't
She
sound
does
like
not
it.
care.
It doesn't sound like she
No.
cares that much.
No.
You know,
Sorry,
I want to talk about overcompensating as well.
And Carmen, your family is still in our thoughts and prayers.
Aw, yay.
Yay. So me and my girls are going to Rock Bar tonight. You going?
What's Rock Bar?
Oh, it's the club in town. Every freshman is going.
Oh, Rock Bar, Rock Bar, Rock Bar. We'll be there.
Good for you. I feel like I never saw you at parties in high school.
I was there. We'll see you tonight. My girls are going too. You'll love them.
Does we mean Benny?
Yeah, Benny and I were just talking about going together, as a matter of fact.
For those who don't know, it's a show created by Benito Skinner. He plays Benny. He's a closeted jock at a university, and you originally came to that project as a writer on it, and then you're cast as a best bud. Can you tell me how that happened, how that transition happened?
Yeah, it was kind of uncanny, which is a word that every time I use it, I'm like, do I know uncanny? I think it's uncanny. But I really read the script and I was like, ooh, that girl feels like me. She's like this girl with curly hair and is from New Jersey and is kind of awkward and overcompensating in these very specific ways. And I was like, that really feels like me. And then we met. And he was like, oh, you seem so much like this character. Do you act? And I was like, I mean, I try, but I've never done. My only acting experience was like on a Comedy Central sketch where I was so nervous that I started before they told us to action. And I was supposed to pretend to run into somebody. And instead, I accidentally really ran into them. I pushed them to the ground. I ad-libbed an expletive. And then before anyone said cut, now that they said action, I was like, was that okay? I mean, it was just like, I was so not prepared to be an actress. But so then Benny was like, okay, well, maybe we'll try to find somebody else that looked for other people. And then he's like, I really have a good feeling that you could be it. And then they auditioned me quite a handful of times. The first couple of times I was so nervous that they were bad, but they worked with me until it got good, and which I'm very fortunate for. But then I was in a TV show and that was crazy. But,
wow. What's crazy about it? Like, is it? It seems like it would be awkward, but I don't know. What's crazy about it?
I find it very awkward for sure. There's no like audience reaction when you're behind the lens of something, but also just to go from, I mean, I spend so much time from working from like a writer or producerial point of view, where the idea that someone that had no acting experience could be a number 2 in the show just feels so far from what Hollywood is right now, where I don't have followers. It just felt really deeply unlikely. And so I remember I didn't even, when they called to tell me, I didn't even quite register it. I was like, or I think I thought, I was like, yeah, sure, this is going to fall apart immediately. Cause I'd seen it happen on so many shows before where, it just felt deeply unlikely. But yeah, it all came together somehow.
But now that you're in it, like really in it, you have it's an established character. You're right there. Does it feel easier now? Does it feel more natural, or does that awkward thing continue?
Know that anything has ever felt natural to me in my 28 years on this planet. So not as, just as much as I would say, no. But maybe, you know what, I say that, but I do think that stand-up can kind of feel a little natural. Writing can kind of feel a little natural. I'm sure acting, give me 10 years. I guess it takes 10 years to feel comfortable with something, maybe, is the thing. So now that
you need another few.
Give me another, 9.
Okay, 9. All right. So you work on these shows like Overcompensating, on Shrinking, on, like I said, What We Do in the Shadows. Does working on these kind of projects, now that you're back on stage, does it bring something to your writing and to your stand-up?
You know, you would think it would bring something to my writing in the sense that materially, but actually I think what it brings is a sense of relief where like I get to be so loose with stand up, and in acting your schedule's crazy, you're constantly trying to hit certain marks, and there's even when it's fluid, it's still a dance where you're trying to pull the right levers and make the right moves. And so stand up gets to be now this place where I do anything that I want, and I can like truly be like just a crazy little munchkin type thing. And so I think it's actually like expanded my craft in that way, where I'm less afraid to take risks because I have to be so not necessarily conservative, but like prescribed in my exposure otherwise via comedy.
When you're taking this this time to do a lot of stand-up, does it speak to the writing then when you have to go back into a writer's room? And do you feel sharper in telling jokes or writing jokes once you've had some time on the stage doing stand-up to a live audience? Because this is two different, very different sort of experiences.
I think so. I think the whole thing is like kind of an organism in, when you're writing jokes for yourself and you're working out on stage, you feel a confidence in your voice, and then you get to use that voice in a room, because I mean, a writer's room is just the scariest stand-up you've ever done in your whole life.
Is it really? Because there's all these people, like, just paint the picture for me of a writer. You walk in and what's happening? Like, how does
you walk in?
Yeah.
There's a long table. You're like, where do I sit? Is this the kind of job where there's a hierarchy? I don't know. Everybody's going to say there's no hierarchy because everybody's the cool boss, but those are lies. And you're like, okay, where do I sit? Oh, I'm going to sit at this chair. Okay, now I see everybody is sitting in specific places. Now I got to make a joke about how I sat in the wrong place. Ha ha ha, silly me. You know what? And so it's like, already now you're down. You go, you sit in the chair you're supposed to sit in. They say, okay, we're going to be talking about storylines for this character. Does anyone have any relationship to this character? Do I? Nope, because that's a random old guy. So I have to think really quick. What's my connection to being a random old guy? Okay, well, I've known a couple of old guys and they have lived these tales. Okay, so now I'm telling stories about this old guy, and I hope people laugh or they won't laugh. And I will, I don't know, go home and be the saddest I've ever been. It's like, it is true. It's stand up in its most vicious form when it's bad, not bad, when it's tough. You're like, oh, let me just sit around a table of my peers, a group of people that I couldn't have any more respect for, like, and perhaps fail. Or you're like, wow, I am like just grooving with and creatively, writing with people that I think are brilliant, and they're somehow making me better and I'm making them better, and we're all laughing, and and suddenly everyone's like flash dancing. I don't know, but it's just like
that image.
A bunch of nerds. But so it can be really, really good and really, really scary. But for the most part, I mean, I feel so fortunate to have that job in that space.
I think there's shows that have shown us a little bit behind the curtain in a sort of in a dramatic way what a writer's room is like, but I really do appreciate you taking us into that particular writer's room.
So glad I could do that.
The anxious and like, oh my God. Yeah. It made me sweat. So from stand-up to writing to acting, is there one of those spaces where you feel the most like Wally?
No, and that's not fun. But the truth is, no, I think that different parts of myself go to different things, silly things and things that deeply come from my point of view. I put into stand-up things when I'm going through considering something emotional, or I'm asking myself, what is mother? That goes into writing. I don't ask what is mother on stage.
Of
it's
course.
Like, and then acting is more about, I think, figuring out my relationships with other people and being present in my connections, and how do I, portray these relationships and what I'm going through. So I would say each piece of me goes in each, craft in a different way.
That's a great answer. And, while I have you, people are going to say, Wally, that's an unusual name for a young lady. Where does it come from? Can you just tell me that?
It comes from, it's my grandmother's maiden name, is Waldinger. Not a lot of people don't ask me that. I think that's the first time I've been asked that in an interview. So that's pretty cool. But it's her maiden name. They made it my first name, and I'm gonna be honest, horrible first name. I don't recommend it as a first name, but it sounds like a part. Please pass me the Waldinger. It's like, really? No one had the foresight to be like, this is a series of sounds and not a name. But but Wally, I like Wally. Wally's good.